Over the past few years, I have taken many long-distance trips. In 2022, I left my hometown of Cincinnati to start at Arizona State University. Although my family moved here in 2023, I still take multiple flights a year, oftentimes to call soccer matches such as the 2024 Big 12 Women's Tournament in Kansas City, the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup, and recently for USL Championship side Phoenix Rising FC. Like most of us, soccer teams were not traveling by plane in 1930, but the anticipation of seeing a new city or country, exploring it, growing closer to your group, and in the case of business trips, getting the job done, remained the same. If you listen to episode 1, Soccer's Beginnings, you know Zach Bigalke.
I started it actually when I was still an undergrad, coming back in my 30s.
Tom McCabe.
You're playing the Portuguese team one week, and you're playing the Scottish team, you're playing the German team. One might be a mix.
And James Brown.
He had only really kicked the ball in town in Scotland and played a bit on grade school teams.
They're still with me for this episode, where we'll explore the timeline and broader impact of the United States' most important business trip in their early years, the 1930 FIFA World Cup. Safe to say it was successful, and showed how the Stars and Stripes fared against the world. I'm Mahir Sinhasan, and this is the History of Soccer in the United States, Episode 2, an introduction to the global stage. So let's pick up where we left off in Episode 1. The American Amateur Football Association, also known as the AAFA, was founded, and it had its own tournament called the National Challenge Cup, both of which were spearheaded by Tom Cahill, who, according to McCabe,
often gets called the father of American soccer.
But Cahill knew that tournaments were not enough to keep soccer play consistent, and so he turned to other sports for inspiration. With the growing amount of leisure time after the First World War, sports in the United States entered a golden age. People would cheer on national icons such as baseball player Babe Ruth, football player Red Grange, and boxer Jack Dempsey. Cahill's hope came from Major League Baseball. It showed professional sports as profitable and as a common venture for entrepreneurs, such as club owners. He created the American Soccer League, or the ASL, in 1921, a top-flight group that Bigalke says
Was professional and paying players above the table.
8 clubs, all on the East Coast, played in the league's first season. Although the Jersey City Celtics dropped out a few games in, the inaugural campaign was deemed a quiet success, with 4 teams playing the expected 24-game schedule. While some teams named themselves the traditional football club, or FC, which is still seen today, many team names paid homage to the communities they played for.
You're an immigrant yourself, you're playing your game, you're representing, your background, your neighborhood.
This was seen in Massachusetts, where 6-time ASL champions Fall River Marksmen showcased the city's occupation and the team's success.
So Fall River, as I mentioned, was a textile town, one industry town. And they had a slogan contest in the early 1900s, and one of the winners was the City of Spinners and Winners. They were spinning this print cloth more than any other, town in the United States, maybe even the world, and then they were winning AFA Cup championships and U.S. Open Cup championships. So it was a good encapsulation in that kind of civic motto.
A civic motto for one of the many fan bases that helped the American Soccer League become the best in the nation.
That plays such a huge role in giving those hotbeds, more momentum. Those mill towns in New England, Bethlehem still, through New Jersey into New York. The fact is so many of those players are pulled from the American Soccer League. It's just the high level of play of that league. They're 12 years ahead of Argentina in terms of being fully officially professional. I want to say 15 or 17 years ahead of Brazil. So the fact is this was the place to come if you wanted to play in the Americas during that period. So I think the fact that you just have more talent embracing the opportunity to come here in that period and get paid for what they do just raises the level of play so high.
That talent came from different countries, such as Egypt, Norway, and Sweden. But no other group flocked to the US more than the British. It got to the point where the Scottish Football Association held a meeting to address the quote-unquote American menace, a movement where many of the best Scottish players left their clubs to play in America. Minimal at first, the migration took off in 1925, when the ASL expanded from 8 to 12 teams. And as Bigalke mentioned, they were coming for the money. In one instance, Scottish winger Alec McNabb was making £4 a week playing for Greenock Morton in the Scottish First Division. He was offered triple that amount to play overseas. McNabb told reporters that he, quote, made no secret to where he was going, end quote. This is something Sash Vice President James Brown knows well. His grandfather, Jim Brown, played in all 3 matches as the youngest American during the 1930 World Cup, and he played for Manchester United, yes, the Manchester United, a couple years later. But Jim's journey to the United States started across the Atlantic Ocean.
He had only really kicked the ball in town in Scotland. That's what all the kids did. So coming over into the U.S., his height, his way of approaching the game from an unstructured point of view, and his speed allowed him to jump on and fill in when he was in Plainfield, New Jersey, working in a metal factory.
18-year-old Jim came across the pond in 1927 to live with his father, and like many Scots, he joined the American Soccer League. After playing 8 games on an amateur contract, he shined with the New York Giants, scoring 11 goals in 17 games. James explained that back then, players did not need full citizenship. They just had to declare their intent in order to make the national team. So after his rise in the concrete jungle, Jim announced his plan and received his American citizenship on the voyage down to Uruguay for the 1930 World Cup. As for the trip, the United States and Mexico boarded the SS Menargo in Hoboken, New Jersey about a month before the inaugural tournament. While en route, the Americans participated in calisthenics, which were led by Jack Cole, one of the best coaches in the ASL.
They often never used the ball in training. It was more about running, keeping your physical endurance, making sure that you could keep up and even go past what was expected, because you knew how to play, you knew how to touch the ball. A lot of people said, and my grandfather included, that 1930 U.S. team would not have gotten the results that they did, 3rd place, without the efforts of Jack Cole and his training methods.
Beyond the calisthenics, players engaged in other festivities.
There was a big program, like a theatrical program that you see in the book that was given on the Menargo. So it wasn't just, okay, dinner and breakfast and lunch are at these times, but we're going to hold a lot of events.
Events that made the once-in-a-lifetime trip special before the ball was kicked.
A lot of these players on the U.S. national team never left the United States. That was their first experience on an international, or at least the Americas level.
When they got to the host country, the Stars and Stripes took care of business. As the top seed in Group 4, they first beat Belgium 3-0, their first victory at a major soccer tournament. They then picked up another 3-0 win over Paraguay, before losing to Argentina 6-1 in the semifinals. While they did not play a consolation match, they placed 3rd with a better goal differential than Yugoslavia. The 1930 World Cup was impacted by the lack of European nations. The Netherlands, Sweden, Italy, Spain, and Hungary did not send teams after a failed bid by the Italians to host the World Cup. Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Switzerland also declined invitations, refusing to take the 2-week boat ride. Regardless, the United States proved that they could compete at the global stage.
When you look at their previous results in the Olympic Games, no one expected them to do anything. They got destroyed in the 1928 games. They got beaten in 1924. It was great because the U.S. was laying low. All they did was run. On the fields, the French journalist called them the shot putters because of their legs. Of course, there was ball movement, but it was more physical activity. The majority of the team that were on the field were of Scottish origin. So they're speaking Scottish. So people are saying, wait a minute, these people must be, they must be ringers. They must have been hired. How could they do so well? As professionals in the U.S., they were one of the only professional teams at the 1930 World Cup because all the other federations were amateur.
The successes in Uruguay showcased the peak of the American Soccer League, bringing players to the United States and creating consistent and domestic high-level competition. This led to them building a community that represented the red, white, and blue. but those successes were short-lived. By the mid-1920s, a few teams were not making money, and around that time, the more progressive Bill Cunningham, a sports writer for the Boston Post, took over as the league president. He also took the secretary position, replacing the league's architect, Tom Cahill. Cunningham brought sweeping changes, adding substitutions and judges at the end of the pitch to see if the ball crossed the line. The more questionable decision being adding a penalty box when players yelled at opponents and/or the officials. Around the time, the league also backed out of the National Challenge Cup in 1928. When Cunningham fined 3 teams for still participating, the United States Football Association suspended the league's membership, to which the ASL did not care. Cahill was furious. He started the Eastern League as competition. It included 3 former ASL teams, stronger teams from New York State League, and the Hakoah All-Stars franchise featuring Vietnamese players. The teams were frustrated too. Some were paying close to $1,000 a week in player wages. Additionally, the New York Evening Post estimated that the league's clubs spent about $100,000 trying to get 60 players, only for most of them to go elsewhere. Most American sports franchises faced problems at the turn of the decade when Wall Street collapsed. Major League Baseball attendance fell by 65% in the course of 2 years. College football dropped by 40%. With the problems piling up, the top-flight ASL folded in 1931, and it never reached its former glory as only a semi-pro league from 1933 to 1983. While the United States celebrated events like the 1950 World Cup win over England, the nation would have to wait until the 1960s for high-level soccer to reappear. What the next top-flight league looked like is coming up on the next episode of the History of Soccer in the United States. I'm Mahir Hassan.